It's interesting. Adam, I think we've had this conversation before. Pogba's certainly, for a World Cup winner, he still divides opinion. You know, whether you feel as if he's absolutely at it every single week or whether it's not, whether it's 1-4 or 1-5 where he performs brilliantly. Today, he looked very, very sluggish. I mean, he's finally got booked after, what was it, about 83 minutes when he could have been booked after about 26 minutes. He makes fouls. He makes stupid fouls in games when Manchester United are what shall I say, I've got a bit of momentum up, and then he seems to stop it. Then he seems to take ages over making the decision. I mean, he's still a very, very fine player, but at the end of it all, I agree with Gary. I couldn't see it today, particularly when you're looking for someone just after the international break to come really up to it. If Manchester United are looking to make a challenge in the Premier League, this is not the type of performance that you're looking for at all. You can get beaten in a game, but it's the manner in which it is. And for instance, just after... if you don't mind me continuing this here, just at when they've got to 2-2, they can still go on to win the game. So 15 seconds later, they concede a goal. But it's the manner in which they concede the goal. Because I think it's McTominay is the one at the edge of the penalty area where he has the situation under control. The player getting the ball, the Leicester City player getting the ball, is moving away from goal to begin with. And all it is for McTominay to go and keep closing him, sending him away from goal. McTominay backs off him, and the player then suddenly is faced up with him. McTominay not only backs off him, but he backs off into the edge of the penalty area, and then into the penalty area. He's doing the job for the player himself. It's the easiest thing in the world to coach that. I could not believe it myself. And eventually, Vardy scores the goal just from a simple ball across the box.
Easiest thing in the world. Things you have to coach. What do you do then with Paul Pogba? His contract's expiring, Martin. He's free to talk to clubs in January. His future is still up in the air. We know what he can do. And this is a conversation I've had, I think, with every single pundit when I've covered a Manchester United game, which is the future of Pogba. Why can't he do it week in, week out? I mean, is it the manager? Is it the player himself? Do you start to build a new team without Pogba? Do you start looking to the future? Or do you try to keep him just because you know on his day he can do it?
Well, first of all, you may be right. Maybe it is a time to think about building a team without him, because he's the top of conversation almost every single week. And sometimes everybody, probably even including himself and his agent, might get fed up with it. Be interesting. You know my sort of view on it anyway. Maybe I'd like to hear what Gary thinks about it, because Adam and I have had this conversation before about Pogba, and it doesn't seem to veer away from what we say each time.
Well, I think for all of his talent, and undoubtedly Paul Pogba is highly talented as a player. For all of his talent, he doesn't perform on the pitch regularly enough for me to match that talent. So, I need somebody who's going to dominate and dictate the midfield on a consistent basis. Does Paul Pogba do that at Manchester United? I don't feel so. When he's at it, he is one of the very, very best. But for me, he's not at it, to use that phrase, on a consistent enough basis. Sometimes he plays with urgency, and then other times he wants to overdo it. Listen, I couldn't lace his boots as a player. I had nothing like his talent, but I think I played more consistently than him, below his best level. But what I delivered on a consistent basis. And Paul Pogba, for me, doesn't deliver what he's capable of on a consistent basis.
Martin, has there ever been a situation where you had a player who was, on his day, world class, unbeatable, a real game changer, but was so frustrating in the lack of consistency that you just had to say goodbye to them, or perhaps you held on to them a bit longer than you would have wanted to? You've managed some really outstanding players in your time.
Real interesting dilemma that, I must admit, Adam. That is a big concern. Now, Pogba is, as Gary said, a very, very talented player. And I don't really want to cut the conversation just be about him. I think more on a general basis. But we at Aston Villa, and I make myself laugh here because I think the player in question would probably laugh at it himself. John Carew. John Carew was a big centre forward that that I signed from the French league. He came on a free transfer. In fact, actually, we exchanged a player at that stage going in the other direction. And Big John had everything. Really, really talented player, but 6'3", 6'4", big favourite with the Aston Villa crowd. Getting John to get out and play on an afternoon became the biggest problem. When we finally get him out onto the field, fine. But if ever there was a fella thought, well, it's a sunny day, I'm really at it, that's great. Actually, it's raining today, I'm not so sure. Now, John will defy this by saying he played in the Champions League final, and that's quite right, he was. But for such a talented footballer, sometimes he was just a nightmare in many aspects. But having said that, I think we're talking about something different. Carew eventually, when he went onto the field to play and fancied it, he was genuinely unstoppable. But to draw comparisons with Pogba, I think might be stretching it a little bit.
Maybe, perhaps. I mean, Big John Carew.
I happen to mention him more in a jocular fashion. If John walked into my room now, he would probably actually agree with me. I think John was more interested in the nightlife than he was about being a professional footballer. But that aside, he was a fine specimen of a man. He was so strong, and no centre half could really deal with him on his day.
Yeah, he was a big guy, and he's from Norway, of course, and struck up a good partnership with Gabby Bonglahor, a friend of the show, if memory serves me right.
Bonglahor was a different character altogether. Bonglahor was so quick, he was terrific, and then when I first of all came to the football club, and he was kind of slim, but then he really bulked up. But he didn't lose his pace, and Bonglahor did brilliantly for me, I must admit, really brilliantly, and they did have a good partnership together. But yeah, I'm kind of laughing to myself, thinking about it. So forget about it. Let's talk about Manchester United.
Okay.